We are working in Advanced 2. If you're in 7th grade, it's Advanced 2. If you are in 8th grade, it is Course 3. We are doing Lesson 1.2, Example 1, and we are on page 12. Okay, let's take a look at the first problem. 1 5/10 times x plus 15 equals 24. Okay, what I like to do, I'm still going to highlight, and we still need to isolate our variable. So right now, we're going to highlight our variable and everything attached to it, because this is what we're trying to isolate, get by itself. That means we need to get rid of this other stuff. So to get rid of positive 15, I'm going to subtract 15. And what I do to one side, I must do to the other. Okay, these guys cancel. And I'm left with 1 5/10 times x. I have a positive and a negative, so I'm going to subtract and keep the sign of my largest number. Now, I need to isolate my x. So to do that, I need to get rid of this times 1 5/10. So I'm going to divide by 1 5/10. What I do to one side, I must do to the other. So these guys cancel, and x is equal to, can you use a calculator for this? Absolutely. So I have a positive divided by a positive, same signs, means my answer is going to be positive. And 9 divided by 1 5/10 is 6. So x is equal to positive 6. This was our first step. Here was our second step. Two-step equations. 1, 2. We're always working to isolate the variable. So let's do another example. Negative 3x plus 1 equals 7. So my whole goal is still to isolate the variable. And to do that, I need to get rid of this positive 1. So I'm going to subtract 1. And what I do to one side, I must do to the other. So I'm left with negative 3x equals, I have a positive and a negative, so I'm going to subtract and keep the sign of my largest number. My whole goal is still to isolate the variable. So to do that, I need to get rid of this negative 3, this times negative 3. And this is what we did last week. I'm going to divide by negative 3. And what I do to one side, I must do to the other. So they cancel, and x equals, I have a positive and a negative. My signs are different, so my answer is going to be negative. And 6 divided by 3 is 2. So x equals negative 2. Okay, not too bad so far. I think I've kind of got a handle on this. We're going to take it easy on you guys. Let's take a look at another example, because life doesn't stay simple. Sometimes they like to throw fractions at us. Ooh, fractions. It's okay. So we have 1/2 x minus 9 equals negative 25. And remember, minus and negative can kind of be used interchangeably. So just like before, my goal is to isolate the variable. But first I need to get rid of this negative 9 or this minus 9. To do that, I'm going to use the inverse operation, plus or positive. I'm going to add 9. And what I do to one side, I must do to the other. So these guys cancel. I'm left with 1/2 x equals, I have a positive and a negative, so I'm going to subtract and keep the sign of my largest number. My goal is still to isolate that variable. So I need to get rid of this times 1/2. Well, to get rid of times 1/2, I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal. I'm going to multiply by 2/1. And what I do to one side, I must do to the other. So my 2's cancel, my 1's cancel, and I'm left with x equals, okay, I have a negative and a positive. When we're multiplying, different signs are negative. 16 times 2 is 32. And it's 1 times 1, so it would be 32/1. I don't need to do that because it's implied. So my answer is x equals -32. Now, that's all fine and dandy. But every once in a while, they like to give us word problems. So let's take a look at this watches. Watches. The cost, C in dollars, of making some number of watches is represented by C equals 15 times N plus 85. How many watches are made when the cost is $385? So they're giving us the equation. The cost is 15 times N plus 85. Then they're telling us the cost is $385. So I need to write that in where my cost is. So you're going to need to solve that problem. And remember, a word problem requires a word answer. So when you figure out the value of N, when you figure out what N is, you're going to have to write that as a complete sentence. $385 is however blank number of watches. Okay?